Welcome everyone to my Yixuan guide. Yixuan is the first agent to drop in version 2.0 and one who introduces some new mechanics. In this guide, I will firstly go over Yixuan's kit and her new mechanics, her playstyles, drive disks and stats, W engines, team comps, and finally Mindscapes. Keep in mind that Yixuan is not released yet, and information in this video is still subject to change. And without further ado, Yixuan is an S-rank Rupture agent from the Yunkui Summit faction with a special attribute type called Auric Ink. Yixuan's core skill enhancement bonus will increase her base HP and crit rate. Auric Ink is basically a special version of the Ether attribute, as it has the same attribute anomaly effects and is affected by Ether damage bonus and resistance. However, Auric Ink has its own anomaly buildup, separate from Ether. This means that Yixuan cannot build Ether attribute anomaly, nor can Ether agents build up Auric Ink attribute anomaly. Pretty much the same as Miyabi's Frost attribute. The Rupture agent class is a new agent class that apparently possesses a mix of both offensive capabilities and survivability. So Yixuan is very much a damage dealer, but she also has the aforementioned survivability bonus, which I will touch upon later. Rupture agents specialize in dealing sheer damage, a new type of damage that ignores enemy defense. This new damage type relies on sheer force, damage bonuses from W engines or drive disks, a special sheer damage bonus, crit, enemy resistance, and even stun multipliers. Since sheer damage ignores defense, effects like pen ratio, or defense down will not have an effect. Sheer force goes in place of attack in a regular damage formula. Rupture agents convert 30% of their attack into sheer force. This also includes buffs from characters like Astra, where Astra's 1200 attack buff ends up equal to 360 sheer force. Yixuan's core skill increases her sheer force by 0.1 for every point of max HP. The HP to sheer force conversion ratio is less than the attack conversion. However, you'll have much more HP than attack on any given character, which makes increasing max HP more efficient for gaining sheer force. Yixuan also does not use regular energy, and instead uses adrenaline. Adrenaline acts like normal energy, where you would need adrenaline to use an agent's X special. Thanks to Yixuan's core skill, she always starts with the maximum 120 adrenaline when entering combat. On top of the special energy mechanics, Yixuan also has an additional talisman ultimate. This ultimate takes priority over the regular Decibel's ultimate. To use this additional talisman ultimate, Yixuan would need to accumulate 120 technique points, which can be tracked through this bar. You can gain technique points by consuming adrenaline. Using the additional talisman ultimate will grant an Auric Ink point, which allows Yixuan to use her enhanced basic attack, Grand Tai Chi formation. This is where Yixuan's basic gameplay loop starts becoming clear. By using her X specials and consuming adrenaline, Yixuan can gain technique points. Once enough technique points are available, she can use her additional talisman ultimate, and therefore the enhanced basic attack, dealing the most damage possible, sort of like Miyabi's Fallen Frost stacks and enhanced basic attack. To keep using Yixuan's X specials, you would need to have adrenaline, which will be restored passively, but can also be restored by triggering perfect dodges or the Auric Ink attribute anomaly. The enhanced basic attack and certain actions through Yixuan's X special can also restore adrenaline. If Yixuan's adrenaline reaches 0, she enters a state where adrenaline can only be restored through the enhanced basic attack or faction bonus. Yixuan's core skill will also allow her enhanced basic attack, X specials, assists, chain attack, and both ultimates to deal sheer damage, ignoring enemy defense. The damage dealt by these attacks will also be increased by 60%. Yixuan has two versions of her X special. The first can be triggered by holding basic attack, which will consume adrenaline and charge a sphere dealing ether and sheer damage while drawing in smaller enemies. If you use this X special just before being attacked, Yixuan can automatically trigger a perfect dodge and enter Vital View for a few seconds. Vital View is just a special state that some agents can enter after perfect dodges or assists, where enemy movement is momentarily slowed down. The second X special can be used by holding special, in which Yixuan charges up and launches an attack dealing ether and sheer damage. If Yixuan is attacked while charging, she will automatically block the attack. Using this special just before being attacked will allow Yixuan to parry and restore 10 adrenaline. If you still have enough adrenaline after using the second special, you can press special again to follow up the attack, dealing ether and sheer damage. To use Yixuan's enhanced basic attack, Grand Tai Chi formation, you would first need to obtain an Auric Ink point through her additional Talisman ultimate, and while using Yixuan's special sprint, you can press the basic attack button to unleash the Grand Tai Chi formation, dealing ether and sheer damage, while also restoring a total of 21 adrenaline points in 3 seconds. Vital View will also be entered while this skill is active. In the beginning, I mentioned that Rupture agents possess survivability bonuses. In Yixuan's case, this comes in the form of her regular Decibels ultimate, which evenly distributes squad members' HP. And lastly, Yixuan's faction bonus, which requires either a support, stun, or defense agent, which is pretty much all viable team comps. Activating this faction bonus will allow Yixuan to restore 3 adrenaline per second for 10 seconds when a party member uses an ultimate. Additionally, when Yixuan is switched out by a perfect assist, she will launch a Thunderbolt, dealing sheer damage and restoring 10 adrenaline, and after using her ultimate, crit damage will be increased by 40% for 15 seconds. With that out of the way, Yixuan's skill level priority would be to first level her core skill alongside her X special. Both her ultimates and chain attack can contribute to damage, and so will her basic attacks, so leveling both would be beneficial. Then you can level up her quick assist and dodge. Moving on to playstyles, Yixuan introduces a new agent class, Rupture, but also some new and unique mechanics. This introduces some ambiguity in regards to playing her, but also limits her W engine, drive disk options, and even team comps, since she comes with a new agent class and deals a special type of damage. But Yixuan is essentially an attack agent in disguise, as she is played in similar teams to attack agents, where you would have a support or defense agent alongside a stunner. Some agents, specifically Coleda, Astra, Lucy, and Pulchra, have had their faction bonus adjusted to accommodate for Rupture agents, but none of the current agents specifically buff sheer force. Agents that buff attack like Astra, Lucy, or Caesar will be usable with Rupture agents, especially Astra, but the attack buff won't fully translate into sheer force, as only 30% of attack is converted into sheer force. Since sheer damage ignores defense, Nicole or Astra won't be useful for Yixuan. Because of that, we do have Pan Yinhu, an upcoming A-rank defense agent, who specifically buffs sheer force. This also leaves room for further improvements to Yixuan's teams, with the introduction of an S-rank sheer support. In terms of stunners, Ju Fufu will be the premier option for Yixuan, but other stunners will still be very viable, since sheer damage is also affected by the stun multiplier. So not a lot of incompatibility there with existing stunners. Hold that thought. So while editing the video, I managed to catch a pretty big mistake I'm making here. Both Qingyi and Trigger require an attack agent for their faction bonus. Not activating the faction bonus will result in a noticeable downgrade. So unfortunately, and unless the faction bonus gets changed to accommodate for Rupture agents, both Qingyi and Trigger won't be that usable with Yixuan. This really only leaves Coleda or Pulchra as the next best option, as the other S-rank stunners just provide buffs outside of Yixuan's niche or just don't work to their best potential with Yixuan. In terms of power level, Yixuan, who supposedly possesses strength equal to that of a Void Hunter, is fittingly a very strong DPS. Compared to the currently playable Void Hunter, Miyabi, with both agents at M0, Miyabi is just slightly ahead. But beware that this comparison here is not exactly apples to apples, and I wouldn't take it as the be-all and end-all. The Miyabi team here is also without Yanagi. The inclusion of Yanagi would pull this team even further ahead. However, unlike the Miyabi team, Yixuan's current best team is not all S-rank agents, so that leaves a lot of room for her team to be just as strong as Miyabi's best team. Not to mention that the new content will likely favor sheer damage, and therefore Yixuan. But something that Yixuan has over Miyabi right now is somewhat better vertical investment. With both characters' mindscapes, Yixuan becomes slightly stronger than Miyabi. Overall, Yixuan is likely going to be a very strong damage dealer. If you already have Miyabi or other strong damage dealers, you don't need to feel forced to get Yixuan, but if you want another damage dealer, be it for deadly assault or for the sake of it, she won't disappoint. As usual though, you should pull for whoever you like. Moving on to drive disc sets, we'll be getting 2 new sets in version 2.0, one of which is meant for Yixuan. The Yunkui Tales drive disc set will increase HP by 10% and increases crit rate by 4% when an X special, chain attack, or ultimate hits an enemy. This can stack up to 3 times, with each stack lasting for 15 seconds, for up to 12% total crit rate. When 3 stacks are achieved, sheer damage will be increased by 10%. The Yunkui Tales set will be Yixuan's best in slot, but the Chaotic Metal set is also decent, provided that you can get Yixuan's Auric Ink attribute anomaly to trigger the corruption effects. Aside from these 2 sets, going for a set that increases attack, like Woodpecker Electro, is going to result in a notable downgrade, since Yixuan scales better with HP. As for 2-piece drive disc sets, going for 2-piece Woodpecker Electro or Branch and Blade Song is usually going to be the best option by a small margin, as the bonus crit can help balance out the crit ratio, especially the 2-piece crit rate. 2-piece Chaotic Metal for the 10% ether damage is also viable and just as strong as 2-piece crit. Moving on to main stats, for your 4th partition, you'd want crit rate or crit damage. Keep in mind that Yixuan already starts with 19.4% crit rate due to her core skill enhancement bonus, and the 4-piece Yunkui Tales set provides a total of 12% bonus crit rate, so you may sometimes prefer to run a crit damage disc. For the 5th partition, ether damage is the best option, but HP is also viable and can be better if you can get better substats. And lastly, for the 6th partition, HP is the best option to increase Yixuan's sheer force. As for substats, you'll want crit rate and damage, then HP, and then attack. You'd want to prioritize HP over attack, but attack is still useful as it increases sheer force regardless. Since sheer damage ignores enemy defense, Pen doesn't really do anything. Moving on to W engines. Unfortunately, since Rupture is a new agent type, there aren't many W engines to pick from, but Yixuan has surprisingly usable options, even W engines that increase attack. Yixuan's best in slot will be her signature W engine, Qingming Birdcage. This W engine has a base attack of 743 and increases HP by 30%. As for its effect, crit rate will be increased by 20%, and when an X special is used, a stack will be gained. Up to 2 stacks can be obtained, each lasting for 15 seconds. When entering combat, 2 stacks will automatically be granted, allowing you to almost always have the maximum effect. Each stack will increase ether damage by 8%, and ultimate and X special damage by 10%. The new Battle Pass Rupture W engine is a very strong alternative. This W engine increases HP, and when a chain attack or ultimate hits an enemy, a stack will be gained, increasing sheer force by 80 for 12 seconds. Up to 3 stacks can be gained. a very strong option on Yixuan, and a nice change from the otherwise mostly mediocre Battle Pass W engines. Puzzle Sphere, the A-rank Rupture W engine, which can be obtained by pulling or through the W engine shop, is a surprisingly usable option, even though it increases attack. This W engine will increase crit damage by 16% for 12 seconds after launching an X special, and if the target's HP is below 50%, X special damage will be increased by 20%, which is great for Yixuan. While the attack increase is not ideal for her, this W engine will still work on Yixuan since it increases crit damage and X special damage. I do want to note that since this effect requires the target's HP to fall below 50%, this is usually fine in game modes like Shiyu Defense, but in Deadly Assault this effect will not be consistent and can result in her damage falling behind. Alternatively, you could use a W engine solely for its crit stat, and it's viable enough to consider on Yixuan. And lastly, the new B-rank Rupture W engine, which oddly enough increases both HP and attack. The HP increase is nice, but I wouldn't recommend it over Puzzle Sphere, which can be obtained for free using the W engine shop. Moving on to teams, Yixuan is usually just going to be played in similar teams to attack agents, where you want a support or defense agent to buff Yixuan alongside a stunner, allowing Yixuan to deal maximum damage while the enemy is stunned. You could also run double support with Yixuan, and it should also be fine. For your support slot, Pan Yinhu and Astra Yao are probably the best two options currently available. Pan Yinhu can increase sheer force by up to 540, while Astra's 1200 attack buff will only result in 360 sheer force. However, Astra also buffs crit damage and damage bonus, making her very close in terms of damage. This is also not considering Astra's quick assists, which are very helpful. With both at M0, you could use either Pan Yinhu gives slightly more damage while being an A rank, and can also free up Astra for your other team. However, with Pan Yinhu's M6, the sheer force buff can go up to 720, making him a much stronger support slot for Yixuan. Other options like Caesar are also usable, where she provides a 300 sheer force buff. Lucy can also be used, however, her buff only goes up to 180 sheer force, and I wouldn't recommend using her over Pan Yinhu, who's also an A rank. For your stunner, Ju Fufu, an upcoming S rank fire stunner, is going to be the best option for this slot. Ju Fufu can stun enemies from off-field, much like Trigger, and also provides a large crit damage buff and buffs chain attack and ultimate damage. Aside from Ju Fufu, you can use Kaleda for faster stuns, and for an A rank option, Pulchra is also viable. Pulchra has the added benefit of being able to stun enemies from off-field, which can make using her a bit more comfortable. You could also go with two support agents, or in this case, a support and a defense agent like Astra and Pan Yinhu. Having a stunner is slightly better, but if you don't have a suitable stunner to use, double support is better. Overall, Yixuan has decent team building options, mostly due to the fact that Pan Yinhu is an A-rank agent who works great with Yixuan. And finally, Mindscapes. M1 will increase Yixuan's crit rate by 20% when entering combat, and additionally grant her 120 technique points, allowing you to immediately use her talisman ultimate, and therefore enhanced basic attack. Also, once every 5 seconds when a squad member hits an enemy, Yixuan will deal damage equal to 50% of her sheer force, and also restore adrenaline points. A pretty decent first Mindscape, allowing her to deal more damage, but also helps with restoring adrenaline points, allowing for more X specials. If you're wondering between getting her first Mindscape or her signature, I would recommend getting her signature, since that provides a larger damage increase, and there currently aren't many other Rupture W engines. M2 will allow Yixuan's ultimate and X special to ignore 15% of enemies' ether resistance. When Yixuan uses her regular Decibel's ultimate, enemy stun duration will increase by 3 seconds. After using the additional Talisman Ultimate, Yixuan will deal damage equal to 1,200% of her sheer force after performing certain attacks. This is another strong Mindscape and a decent early stopping point. M3 and M5 are both level increases. M4 will grant a stack after using an ultimate. Up to 2 stacks can be obtained, with each stack increasing the next X Special's damage by 30%. And lastly, M6, which allows Yixuan to enter a state after using her regular ultimate. During this state, sheer damage is increased by 20%, and Yixuan can use the additional Talisman Ultimate regardless of the number of technique points. This effect can only trigger once every 30 seconds. As usual, a very strong Mindscape and her biggest damage increase. If used correctly, this Mindscape can allow for an extra Talisman Ultimate after using her regular ultimate, and it will also increase sheer damage during this window. Overall, Yixuan can get a lot stronger with vertical investment. Much like other agents, her M1 and M2 are strong early Mindscapes. However, you do not at all need to get any of her Mindscapes, as Yixuan is already strong enough at M0. And that's all from this guide. I'm pretty excited for the new agent class, but also to see what other new agents and mechanics we'll be getting in version 2.0. Thank you for making it till the end, and thanks for watching.